My sister said at least I'm not a waitress at Mom's funeral. Then she needed my catering company. What if your entire life had been defined by someone else's words, and one moment of defiance could change everything? Hey, my name is Josephine. I never thought I'd feel so small in a room full of people who were supposed to love me. The church was packed, the air heavy with grief and the faint smell of lilies, Mom's favorite flower. I stood near her casket, trying to hold myself together, my hands trembling as I clutched the eulogy I'd spent all night writing. I wanted to honor her, to give her the goodbye she deserved. But then my sister, Claire, leaned over, her breath hot against my ear, and whispered, "At least I'm not a waitress." She laughed, a sharp, cutting sound that sliced through the somber organ music. The words landed like a slap, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I was 32. Running a small catering company I'd built from nothing, and yet, in that moment, I was reduced to the summer job I'd had at 19. Claire's voice dripped with condescension, her smirk visible even in my peripheral vision. She'd always had a way of making me feel less, but to do it here, at Mom's funeral, in front of everyone, friends, family, even strangers who'd come to pay their respects. That was a new kind of cruelty. I stood there, frozen, the eulogy crumpling in my hands. My cheeks burned as I felt eyes on me, though I couldn't tell if anyone else had heard her. The minister was droning on about eternal peace, but all I could hear was Claire's laugh echoing in my head. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the pew and never face her again. But I didn't. I straightened my spine, smoothed the paper, and stepped up to the podium. My voice shook as I spoke about Mom, her warmth, her stubborn love, the way she'd always believed in me. Even when I didn't believe in myself. I didn't look at Claire, but I could feel her in the front row, her presence like a weight pressing down on me. As I spoke, I kept thinking about how we'd gotten here. Claire and I hadn't always been like this. Growing up, we'd been close to, years apart, sharing secrets and dreams in our cramped bedroom, but somewhere along the way, things changed. She went to college, got her fancy marketing job, and started looking at me like I was something she'd outgrown. I stayed in our small town, pouring everything into my catering business, Josephine's table. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I'd worked hard, built a reputation, even catered events for people who'd once dismissed me, but to Claire, I was still just a waitress. Someone who served others while she climbed her corporate ladder. When I finished the eulogy, there was a soft murmur of approval from the crowd. A few people wiped their eyes. I should have felt proud, but all I could think about was Claire's words. They weren't just a jab, they were a reminder of every time she'd made me feel small, every time I'd let her. I sat back down, my hands still shaking, and caught her eye. She didn't look sorry. If anything, she looked amused, like she'd won something. I drove home that night, the road blurring through tears I didn't want to shed. Mom was gone, and somehow, Claire's betrayal hurt almost as much as the loss. I kept replaying her words, each syllable carving a deeper wound, but beneath the pain, something else was stirring, a spark of anger, maybe even defiance. I'd spent years swallowing her insults, smiling through her condescension, but this felt different. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Mom, about the life I'd built, about the person I wanted to be. As I pulled into my driveway, the porch light casting a soft glow over my little house, I sat in the car for a long time. The silence was heavy, but it gave me room to think. I could keep letting Claire's words define me, keep shrinking to fit the box she'd put me in, or I could do something about it. I could take control, not just of this moment, but of my whole story. But what would that look like? Would I confront her, call her out in front of everyone like she'd done to me? Would I walk away and pretend it never happened? Or was there another way, something bigger, something that would show her, and maybe even myself, that I was more than her cruel words? I didn't have the answers yet, but as I stared at the stars through my windshield, one thing was clear. I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. Will I choose to stay silent, or will I take control of my own story? I woke up the morning after Mom's funeral, with Claire's words still ringing in my ears. At least I'm not a waitress. It wasn't just the sting of her insult that kept me up all night. It was the way it unearthed a lifetime of smaller, quieter betrayals I'd tried so hard to bury. I sat at my kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold, staring at the chipped mug Mom had given me years ago. It had a faded sunflower on it, and I could almost hear her voice, telling me to bloom where you're planted, Joe. But Claire's voice was louder now, and it was dragging me back to places I didn't want to go. I thought about the time When I was 16, and Claire, 18, had borrowed my speech for the school talent show, I'd spent weeks writing it, pouring my heart into a poem about feeling invisible. She recited it word for word, claiming it as her own, and won first place. When I confronted her, she laughed it off, saying, "It's not like you were going to win, Joe. I did you a favor." I believed her then, or at least I told myself I did. I didn't want to lose her, so I let it go, but the memory still burned, a quiet wound that never quite healed. Then there was college, or, for me, the lack of it. Claire got a full ride to a fancy university, while I stayed home, working double shifts at the diner to help Mom with the bills. Claire would come back for holidays, tossing her new vocabulary around like confetti, talking about her internships and her network. She'd ask about my job with a pitying smile, like I was some charity case she had to tolerate. "Still slinging hash, Joe," she'd say, and I'd laugh, pretending it didn't hurt. Mom would always change the subject, but I could see the worry in her eyes. She knew Claire's words cut deeper than I let on. There were other moments, two smaller, less obvious ones. The way she'd interrupt me at family dinners to talk about her latest promotion. The time she forgot to invite me to her engagement party, only to call me the next day, gushing about how perfect it was. Each time, I told myself it didn't matter. She was my sister, and sisters fight, right? But sitting there in my kitchen, with Mom gone and Claire's latest jab still fresh, I realized these weren't just fights. They were a pattern, a slow erosion of who I was, chip by chip. Until I barely recognized myself. I got up and paced the house, my bare feet, cold against the hardwood. My catering business, Josephine's Table, was my pride, my proof that I was more than Claire's punching bag. I'd started it with nothing but a beat-up van and a dream. Learning recipes from Mom, saving every penny to buy equipment. Now, I catered weddings, corporate events, even a few local celebrity parties. People loved my food, loved the way I made their events feel special. But Claire never saw that. To her, I was still the girl in the greasy apron, serving fries to truckers. I stopped at the mirror in the hallway, staring at my reflection. My eyes were puffy from crying, my dark hair a mess from tossing and turning. I looked tired, but not just from lack of sleep. I looked tired of carrying this weight, of pretending Claire's words didn't matter. I thought about Mom again, how she'd always tell me I was enough. "You've got a heart bigger than this town, Joe," she'd say. But if that was true, why did I feel so small? I went back to the kitchen and pulled out an old photo album from the shelf. It was one Mom had kept, filled with pictures of Claire and me as kids. There we were, gap-toothed and grinning, building sandcastles at the lake. Another photo showed us dressed as witches for Halloween, our arms slung around each other. When did it change? When did Claire decide I wasn't worth her respect? I traced my finger over a picture of Mom, her smile wide and warm, and felt a fresh wave of grief. She'd always been the glue holding us together. Without her, what was left? The phone rang, startling me. It was Sarah, my best friend and part-time assistant at the catering company. "Joe, you okay?" she asked, her voice soft but worried. I wanted to tell her everything about Claire, about the funeral, about the ache in my chest that wouldn't go away, but I didn't. I just said, "I'm fine," because that's what I always said. Sarah didn't push, but she told me to take it easy and promised to handle the next few catering gigs so I could grieve. After we hung up, I sat there, the photo album still open in front of me. I kept thinking about Claire's laugh, the way it had carried so much more than mockery. It was like she wanted me to feel small, like she needed me to stay in my place so she could shine. But why? What had I ever done to her, except love her and try to be the sister she wanted? The questions swirled, each one heavier than the last, and I felt the weight of all those hidden betrayals pressing down on me. I closed the album and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I could keep burying this pain, keep pretending it didn't exist, or I could face it, really face it, and figure out what it meant for me. Could I confront these wounds, or would they stay buried forever? I didn't know yet, but the thought of staying silent felt like giving up. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure I wanted to do that. Can I confront the hidden wounds, or will they remain buried forever? The days after Mom's funeral blurred together, each one heavy with grief and the echo of Claire's words. I tried to keep busy, throwing myself into work at Josephine's Table, prepping for a big wedding we were catering that weekend. But no matter how many trays of hors d'oeuvres I plated, or how many menus I finalized. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had to change. Claire's laugh at the funeral wasn't just a moment, it was a breaking point. I'd spent years letting her chip away at me, swallowing her insults to keep the peace. But peace, at what cost? I was done being the sister who stayed quiet, who let her define me. It was time to take control. I was in the kitchen, kneading dough for rosemary focaccia, when the realization hit me. My hands were covered in flour, the air thick with the scent of yeast and herbs, and I felt a strange clarity. This kitchen, this business, was mine. I'd built it from nothing, against the odds, in a town that didn't always believe in me. Every perfect dish, every happy client, was proof that I was more than Claire's waitress. But she'd never see that unless I made her. And maybe, just maybe, I needed to prove it to myself, too. I wiped my hands on my apron and sat down. At the small desk in the corner of the kitchen, where I kept my business records, I pulled out a notebook, not sure what I was going to write, but feeling the need to get something down. I started jotting down moments every time Claire had made me feel small, every jab, every slight. The list grew longer than I expected, pages filling with memories I'd tried to forget. The talent show poem, the engagement party snub, the way she'd dismissed my business as a cute little hobby at Thanksgiving last year. Writing it down felt like unearthing bones, each one heavy with hurt but also with a strange kind of power. Seeing it all laid out made me realize how much I'd let her get away with. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the notebook. I could keep doing what I'd always done, smile, nod, let it go. Or I could do something different. I could stand up to her, not just for me, but for Mom, who'd always believed I was enough. The thought scared me. Confronting Claire meant risking what little connection we had left. She was my sister, after all, the only family I had now. But staying silent meant betraying myself. And I wasn't sure I could live with that anymore. I thought about what taking control might look like: a big, dramatic showdown, a quiet but firm conversation, or something else entirely, something that didn't just call her out but showed her who I really was. I didn't have a plan yet, but the idea of doing something, anything, felt like a spark in the dark. I closed the notebook and stood up, my heart pounding. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of courage, like I was on the edge of something big. That night, I called Sarah, my best friend and right-hand woman at the catering company. She picked up on the second ring, her voice warm and steady. "Joe, you holding up okay?" she asked. I took a deep breath and told her everything: Claire's words at the funeral, the years of slights, the way I felt like I was disappearing under her shadow. Sarah listened, not interrupting, just letting me spill it all out. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, then said, "You don't have to keep taking this, Joe. You're stronger than you think. What do you want to do about it?" That question hung in the air. What did I want? I wanted Claire to see me, really see me, not as her lesser half but as Josephine, the woman who'd built a life she was proud of. I wanted to stop feeling like I had to apologize for who I was. "I don't know yet," I admitted to Sarah, "but I'm done letting her walk all over me. I want to take control of my story, not just react to hers." Sarah's voice softened. "That's my girl. Whatever you decide, I've got your back." We talked a bit longer, about the wedding gig, about life, about Mom. When we hung up, I felt lighter. Like I'd taken the first step toward something new. I didn't have all the answers, but I had a choice. I could keep hiding from Claire's shadow, or I could step into the light and show her and myself who I really was. The next morning, I woke up with a new kind of energy. I went to the kitchen, turned on the radio, and started prepping for the wedding. As I chopped vegetables and marinated chicken, I let my mind wander. What would it look like to confront Claire? Would I call her out at the next family gathering? Write her a letter? Or was there a way to show her up without saying a word, to let my success speak for itself? The possibilities swirled, each one daunting but also thrilling. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. As I slid a tray of appetizers into the oven, I caught my reflection in the glass door. My face was flushed from the heat, my eyes brighter than they'd been in days. I looked like someone who was ready to fight for herself. But would I have the courage to follow through, or would I hesitate when it mattered most? Can I find the courage to change my life, or will I hesitate when it matters most? The spark of courage I'd felt after talking to Sarah didn't fade. It grew, flickering into something hotter, more focused. I wasn't just tired of Claire's cruelty, I was done with it. Done with her smug superiority, done with the way she made me feel like a shadow in my own life. I wanted her to see me, not as the waitress she mocked, but as Josephine, the woman who'd built a business, a reputation, a life, and I wanted her to feel the weight of her words, to understand what it cost me to carry them all these years. That's when I started planning. Not just a confrontation, but something deliberate. Something that would hit her where it hurt most. Her pride. I was in the middle of a busy week at Josephine's table, prepping for a high-profile charity gala in town. It was a big deal, local bigwigs, a few minor celebrities, and a chance to put my catering business on the map. As I piped mascarpone onto tiny tart shells, my mind churned. Claire always cared about appearances, about being seen as successful, untouchable. What if I could use that against her? What if I could show her up in a way that didn't just hurt her ego but forced her to confront the truth about me and about herself? The idea came to me late one night, as I was scrubbing down the kitchen after a long day. Claire's company was hosting a big client event in a few weeks, a fancy dinner to impress some new investors. She'd mentioned it casually at Mom's funeral, bragging about how she was basically running the show. I remembered the way she'd tossed her hair, so sure of herself, so oblivious to how her words landed. What if I could get Josephine's table hired to cater that event? What if I could walk into her world, serve her the kind of excellence she couldn't ignore, and make her eat her words literally and figuratively? I sat down at my desk, my notebook from the other day still open to the list of Claire's slights. I flipped to a fresh page and started sketching out a plan. First, I'd need to get the gig. Claire's company usually worked with a big-name catering firm from the city, but I knew the event planner, Lisa, from a few local jobs we'd done together. She liked my work, and I'd heard her complain about how overpriced and impersonal the city firm was. If I could pitch Josephine's table as a local high-quality alternative, I might have a shot. I spent the next few days crafting the perfect pitch. I pulled together photos of my best dishes: vibrant beet carpaccio, delicate salmon canapes, a chocolate torte that had made a bride cry at her wedding. I wrote a proposal that highlighted my business's strengths, personalized menus, fresh local ingredients, and a passion for making every event unforgettable. I even included a subtle nod to keeping costs down without sacrificing quality, knowing that would catch Lisa's attention. By the time I emailed it to her, my heart was pounding. But it wasn't just nerves, it was excitement. This could work. Lisa called me the next day. "Joe, your proposal is fantastic," she said, her voice bright. "I've been wanting to work with you again, and this feels like the perfect fit. Can you meet tomorrow to go over details?" I nearly dropped the phone. It was happening. I spent the rest of the day planning the menu, imagining Claire's face when she saw me walk into her event. Not as her waitress sister, but as the mastermind behind the food everyone would be raving about. But as the high of my plans settled, doubts crept in. What if Claire didn't care? What if she laughed it off, found a way to twist this against me? Or worse, what if I messed it up? I'd never catered an event this big, and the stakes felt impossibly high. I could already hear her voice in my head, mocking me if a single dish fell flat. I pushed the thoughts away, focusing on the details: ingredients, scheduling staff, triple-checking every recipe. This had to be perfect. Not just good, but flawless. I called Sarah and told her the plan. She laughed, a mix of disbelief and admiration. "Joe, you're diabolical," she said, "but I love it. You're gonna make her choke on that smug attitude?" We spent hours brainstorming, fine-tuning the menu to include dishes that screamed sophistication but still felt like me, comfort food elevated to an art form, just like Mom used to make, but with my own twist. Sarah promised to pull in our best servers, the ones who could charm a room without breaking a sweat. "We're not just catering," she said, "we're putting on a show." As the event drew closer, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. This wasn't just about proving a point, it was about reclaiming something Claire had taken from me, piece by piece, over the years. I wanted her to see me, to feel the weight of her own cruelty. But what would happen when it was over? Would I feel the victory I was chasing, or would it leave me hollow, like so many of my fights with Claire had before? I didn't know, but I was too far in to turn back now. The night before the event, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My plan was set, my team was ready, and I could almost taste the moment when Claire would realize she'd underestimated me. But a small part of me wondered, would this be enough? Would I feel victorious when it was over, or would the consequences leave me feeling empty? Will I feel victorious when it's over, or will the consequences leave me feeling empty? The night of Claire's company event arrived, and my stomach was a knot of nerves and determination. The venue was a sleek downtown banquet hall, all glass and gold accents, buzzing with the kind of people Claire loved to impress: suits with expensive watches, women in glittering dresses, and a hum of self-important chatter. My team from Josephine's table was set up in the back, a well-oiled machine in black aprons, arranging trays of lavender honey-glazed duck skewers and truffle-infused risotto bites. I'd poured everything into this menu, every dish a testament to the skill and heart Claire had dismissed for years. Tonight, I wasn't just catering. I was staking my claim. I caught sight of Claire across the room, holding court with a glass of champagne, her laugh loud and practiced. She hadn't noticed me yet, and I was glad. I wanted her to see the food first, to taste it, to hear the praise before she realized who was behind it. Sarah caught my eye from the serving line and gave me a nod, her grin saying, "We've got this." I adjusted my apron, took a deep breath, and stepped into the fray, directing my team with a calm I didn't fully feel. The guests were raving by the first course. A man in a tailored suit stopped me to ask about the roasted fig and prosciutto tarts, saying they were divine. A woman in a red gown called the dessert my signature lemon-thyme panna cotta a revelation. I smiled, thanked them, and kept moving, but inside, I was soaring. This was my work, my vision, and it was landing exactly as I'd hoped. I could feel the momentum building, the room alive with the kind of energy that only comes when every detail is perfect. Then it happened. Claire was mid-conversation with a group of investors when one of them waved me over. "You're the chef, right?" he asked, holding up a crab-stuffed mushroom. "This is incredible. Who's behind this spread?" I saw Claire's head turn, her eyes narrowing as they landed on me. For a split second, her face froze, and I swear I saw a flicker of something shock, maybe even fear before she plastered on her usual smile. "This is my sister, Josephine," she said, her voice tight. "She runs a little catering business." The word little was a jab, but it didn't land the way it used to. I smiled, wide and steady. "Josephine's table," I said, meeting her gaze. "We're thrilled to be here tonight." The investor beamed, oblivious to the tension, and launched into a story about a meal he'd had in Paris. Claire's smile faltered, just for a moment. And I knew she felt it the shift, the realization that I wasn't invisible anymore. As the night went on, the praise kept coming. Lisa, the event planner, pulled me aside to say the client was blown away and wanted to book us for their next event. I thanked her, my heart pounding, but my eyes kept drifting to Claire. She was watching me now, her expression unreadable. I wanted to walk up to her, to say something cutting, to make her feel as small as she'd made me. But I didn't. I let the food speak, let the guests' compliments do the talking. This wasn't about yelling or fighting, it was about showing her what I was capable of. By the end of the night, my team was exhausted but triumphant. We'd pulled it off without a hitch. As we packed up, Claire approached me, her heels clicking on the polished floor. "Nice job, Joe," she said, her tone clipped, like it hurt to say it. "Didn't know you had it in you." I looked at her, searching for sincerity, but her eyes were guarded. "Thanks," I said simply, turning back to my work. I didn't need her approval anymore. I'd proven my point. Driving home, I felt a rush of adrenaline, but also a strange unease. I'd done what I set out to do. Claire had seen me, and she couldn't dismiss me now. But the victory didn't feel as sweet as I'd imagined. There was a hollowness, a question lingering in the quiet of my car. Had this really changed anything? Had I reclaimed myself, or was I still chasing her shadow? I gripped the steering wheel, the city lights blurring past. Would I feel relieved after this, or would it leave me questioning everything? Will I feel relieved after this, or will it leave me questioning everything? Months after Claire's event, I stood in the kitchen of Josephine's table, now bustling with new hires and bookings that stretched into next year. The success of that night had changed everything. My business was thriving, my confidence was stronger, and I felt like I'd finally stepped out of Claire's shadow. But the victory wasn't what I thought it would be. It wasn't about Claire anymore. It was about me, and the peace I'd found in letting go. Claire had reached out a few weeks after the event, asking me to cater her wedding. Part of me wanted to say no, to keep her at arm's length. But I said yes, not for her, but for me. I wanted to prove I could do it without anger, without needing her approval. The wedding was beautiful, and my team delivered a flawless menu. Claire thanked me afterward, her words softer than usual, almost genuine. I nodded, smiled, and let it be. We'd never be the sisters we were as kids. But I didn't need her to define me anymore. I thought about Mom a lot during those months. She'd always said I had a heart bigger than this town, and I was starting to believe her. I'd spent so long carrying Claire's words, letting them shape me, but now I was writing my own story. I forgave Claire, not because she deserved it, but because I deserved to be free. Standing in my kitchen, surrounded by the hum of my team and the smell of fresh bread, I felt a quiet joy. I was enough, always had been, as I locked up for the night. I looked at the stars, the same ones I'd stared at after Mom's funeral. They felt different now, brighter, like they were cheering me on. I was ready for whatever came next, not because I'd won some battle, but because I'd found peace in being me.